quarterbacks are expensive in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
Even average quarterbacks are expensive in the portal. And like I mentioned before, you don't have infinite amounts of money. So to get a good quarterback, you have to spend a lot of money. And North Carolina is in the position to either ride with Gio Lopez in year two, which I wouldn't necessarily think is a thing, but we'll see. And they have two freshmen on the roster that we have not seen play at all, other than a kneel and an interception from Newkirk. This is what is ridiculous to me, Don, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. You have to know what you have in that room before you go out and have to spend $2-3 million to get a one quarterback, because this team's got to have. This is how you get the fan base back, right? The fan base is struggling with potentially 4-8. 6-6 would be, with wins over Duke State, would do miracles with the fan base. But if that doesn't happen, you need a star. You need a shining light that people can rally around and get excited about. And quarterback's the position where that happens. I've always talked about Bryce Baker. We just don't know what the plans are with him. We haven't seen any tangible evidence of a plan other than stay on the bench, young man. Your thoughts here, Don, because this is where Carolina, even though offensive line could be more important in the grand scheme, this is where North Carolina has to hit a home run. And, Kyle Schwarber leadoff home run and get it all back.
Oh, God, Tommy, you're doing so well. All right, so where do I want to go with this? So, all right, can I get some people mad at me? Let me get some people mad at me. So here two hot takes. One, I've seen people mention that if Mendoza or Mintier were North Carolina's quarterbacks, that they would have won however many games. I think that's false. I think this offense hampers the quarterback, as we were talking about earlier, not wanting them to throw down the field. I think they're very specific about what they're asking the quarterbacks. And I think Gio Lopez is an example of that. When I watched Gio Lopez from his South Alabama plays, to me, one of the things that worried me was he was a little YOLO, kind of getting a little risque out there and just kind of, running to his right and then throwing across his body across the field all the way to the left sideline. And fortunately, he'd have a taller receiver there than the DB, and they would come down with the pass and for a big gain, and everybody was happy. That doesn't happen in North Carolina, and I think that's one of the things. Obviously, the coaching staff kind of worked with him. It's also one of the reasons why, because a lot of people are saying, "Oh, I thought Lopez was a runner." Well, I think that they have kind of, at least early on, it seems like they open. So correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. It seems like more recently he's been able to run, but earlier it seemed like he wasn't allowed to run, and it seems like he's doing too much thinking overall, and that's not his game. He's more of an instinctual player, and so I think in a different scenario, Lopez, I think, would be a much better quarterback. We actually have seen it. His numbers were better at South Alabama than they're, with I would assume lesser talent than they have been at North Carolina. And so now, I mean, is he, a quarterback that can lead you to a national championship? Probably not. He's probably more of a, like a slightly above average quarterback. I just don't think he's nearly as bad as what people think. I think that the offensive system really kind of holds him back. I'm not against North Carolina going out and trying to get a quarterback. That obviously wouldn't hurt if you can upgrade. The problem is that they have tried multiple times to get a quarterback. They tried with Ryan Brown. It didn't work. It was a misevaluation. They evaluated Gio Lopez, and he's not fitting in the system. So these are the same people they're going to evaluate a quarterback again. And so I do expect them to try to upgrade the quarterback position, because they definitely have had a grass is always greener mentality. I mean, because I have sources who told me that Ryan Brown looked really good in practice, looked better than what Lopez did, and yeah. So anyway, so I said a whole lot. Anything that stuck out to you?
So an interesting, as I watched Wake Forest play last week, Robbie Ashford is not a great quarterback.
No.
But he was very effective against North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
The way they used him, and somebody spoiled my thing in the chat. Maybe a former or a current chat MVP. I watched how they used him, and I watched how he was effective against North
Chat
Carolina.
MVP.
Current chat MVP, and I watched how he was very effective and how he basically won the game for Wake Forest by his ability to run the football, not throwing it. Even though he threw it pretty effective and to open guys, but he made some bad throws. But I thought he was really good against North Carolina. Who's his offensive coordinator at Wake Forest?
Gio's offensive coordinator at South
Gio
Alabama.
Lopez's former offensive coordinator at South Alabama. He knows how to use a quarterback like that. That is not an elite thrower, not even an elite runner, but you can be effective with that. And that, to your point, this offensive staff they've set offensive football back in Chapel Hill, at least back to, I don't even know when, because even Gary Tranquil's offenses were better. Even certainly John Shoop's offenses were better. And so as far as the quarterbacks, again, we're in a situation where we don't know how good or bad they truly are. He certainly looks bad, and he certainly his numbers look terrible. But you have to have an offensive coordinator, an offensive quarterback coach, and everybody else that understands how to utilize the talents that you actually have. And it started in day one, putting him under center against TCU. Yes. And so we've seen that. Somebody asked, "Are we going to do a coordinator room?" Well, we could. We'll do that. We'll do that when the season's over. But you've got a situation here where if you're going to go out and get a quarterback, you've already got money in the current one on the roster. You've got two freshmen that you have no idea how they look under the bright lights. And somebody mentioned Marquise Williams. Darian Durant was not a good practice quarterback. But John Bunning gave him an opportunity against Oklahoma back when Oklahoma was really good. And he basically took the job from Ronald Curry because of the way he played. And Darian Durant turned out to be one of the best quarterbacks Carolina's had because he got that opportunity. Had he never gotten the opportunity, we never would have heard of him. He'd have transferred out, and he'd have gone on to torch somebody else. That's where I'm at with this quarterback room. And that's where I'm at with the coaches.
I 100% agree. Players are different in games than in practice. There's only so much that you can see in a practice compared to a game. It's why we scrimmage, which colleges don't get to really do other than themselves. Yeah, I mean I agree with you, and I think it wouldn't shock me if Lopez left North Carolina and goes somewhere next year and ends up having a much better year than what he had this past season or this current season in North Carolina. I'm not saying Lopez is a great quarterback. I just don't think he's nearly as bad as people think. And I think North Carolina and someone, I'm going to steal, who is it? I'm going to steal, it might have been Sam Rogers. I mean, he says Sam Howell and Drake May, probably not in the transfer portal. And I agree. And if they are probably going somewhere else or either going to a place that has more money or like a Miami or whoever, or they're going to a place where they have a relationship. Well, that goes out the door when you have an entire staff that are related to each other and are from the pros. So and we can look at it. I mean, Belichick could have been hired last June and still wasn't getting Mendoza because of the relationship. Mateer was still going to go to Oklahoma because of relationship. Didn't matter what time Belichick came in. So, and And as I've said multiple times, Ryan Brown was number 3 on UNC's board. So they weren't going to get the top 2 no matter what. The relationships were way too strong, stronger than money. Their number 3 was Ryan Brown. So anyway, yeah. So my expectation is that they go into the portal just because there's always been this grass is always greener approach, and my expectation is they'll get somebody who's somewhere in the ballpark of how good Gio Lopez is, and it's all going to depend on what the what the offensive staff and the offensive scheme looks like next year for how good that quarterback plays. Because I feel like this offensive scheme kind of handcuffs the quarterback.
Yeah, and people ask about Travis Burgess. I mean, he had a serious leg injury, and if folks are going to talk about lament not being in spring practice for Lopez, and that was a huge deal, where you're in the same situation with Travis Burgess there, and he's a freshman and all that, and they've shown that the 2 freshmen on the roster have not gotten an opportunity. So it is an interesting.
Well, and so we've heard. I shouldn't say we. I've heard a lot of it is just not being comfortable with how prepared or lack thereof of the true freshman quarterbacks. I mean, Burgess is not going to be prepared either. So, I mean, but
I think it's going to come down to your point and the point I made earlier is having a coordinator and an offensive coaching staff that can mesh the talent that they have with a quarterback that blends into that system and is effective in that system. And I think as far as North Carolina's running backs and their wide receivers, there's plenty of talent on the roster currently to handle that aspect of it. But they're going to have to build the offensive line. And if they have to go get a quarterback, they're going to spend a chunk of change on it's kind of like when you're in grade school, if Johnny has 10 pennies and Johnny has to spend 5 pennies on that piece of cake, how many pennies does he have left to buy the rest of the meal? And it's going to be that way. So we'll talk about this and much, much more